Weekly concept. On the move. Essential questions. What are some reasons people moved west? New beginnings. All through our nation's history, people have moved west. The pioneers moved west for a chance to farm and owned land. Prospectors went west to pan for gold. During the Dust Bowl years, people moved west in search of jobs and the hope of a better life. What might be some other reasons why people decided to move west? What are some stories that you have read about people moving west? Talk about it. Write some of the words that describe why people moved west. Talk about what people's hopes may have been as they began their journey. Vocabulary. Use the picture and the sentences to talk with a partner about each word.
Plunging. We watched the dog jump off the rock and go plunging into the lake. Prospector. The prospector carefully panned for gold in the river. Scoffed. Tony's sister scoffed at his dream of becoming an Olympic athlete.
Settlement. Pioneers built many settlements as they moved west. Shrivel. Grapes left in the hot sun will eventually shrivel up and turn into raisins. Shrivel. To shrivel means to shrink, wrinkle, or wither. Shrivel. To shrivel means to shrink, wrinkle, or wither. Territories. The pioneers were awed by the size of the territories west of the Mississippi. Topple. The line of dominoes slowly began to topple over. To topple means to collapse or fall. To topple means to collapse or fall. Withered. A whole field of sunflowers withered and died during the drought.
Genre, Talltale. My Big Brother Johnny Kaw. Essential question. What are some reasons people moved west? Read about the Kaw family's journey to settle in Kansas. I was just a tadpole of a girl when my family decided to leave the crowded city life behind. Daddy said, "There are territories out west with wide open spaces. The Kaw family needs room to grow." He was mostly talking about my big brother. At 15, Johnny had grown so tall that when he stretched out in bed at night, his head hung out the front door, and his feet hung out the back door, all the way into the chicken coop where the hens laid eggs between his toes. Mama loaded up the wagon with our belongings, and Daddy hitched up the oxen. We began to head west, but it wasn't long until Johnny hollered for everybody to stop. "We'll never get there with these slowpokes pulling us," Johnny scoffed. He unhitched the team and put one ox on each shoulder. "Mind you don't let them topple off," Daddy hollered. "Yes, sir," Johnny said. "Tadpole can keep an eye on 'em." He picked me up and set me on top of his head, where I had to hang on to handfuls of Johnny's red hair to keep from falling off. Then Johnny grabbed hold of the hitch and began pulling the wagon. "Wake up!" He never did have much sense of direction. He pulled that wagon one way, then the other, faster and faster, digging out the biggest gully you ever saw. The next night a big rain came and filled it up. I hear that now they call that crooked gully the Kaw River. Johnny pulled our wagon to a Kansas settlement, where people were trying to figure out how to raise crops. "Problem is these mountains," one settler said. "They are in the way." Johnny said that was no problem. He saw a big cottonwood tree, used a saw to cut it down, and whittled it into a giant scythe. Next he whacked the mountains off down near the ground, hauled them west, and piled them up in a big row. Today folks call them the Rocky Mountains. Everybody in Kansas was so happy with the nice flat land that they asked us to stay and homestead with them. We built a sod house and started planting wheat. Now one summer it was mighty dry. All of the wheat had started to shrivel up in the field. Our neighbors came and asked for Johnny's assistance. "My crop has about withered away to nothing," said one neighbor. "Without rain we're done for." "I have got an idea," said Johnny, looking up at some puffy clouds. He grabbed hold of his big hoe and commenced poking holes in the clouds. Down came the rain in buckets, and the wheat was saved. Caw! One morning at the riverbank, Mama was plunging our dirty clothes in the water to get them clean when a prospector rode up. He said he was heading to California to find gold. "Trouble is," he said, "there's not one decent trail between here and there." Mama said, "Let me talk to my son." Johnny was happy to help. For a week he hiked back and forth to all kinds of places, dragging his giant bags of wheat everywhere, clearing trails of trees, brush, and boulders. The Gold Rush folks were tickled to find good clear paths that they named the Oregon Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, and the Chisholm Trail. I'm sure glad our family ended up in Kansas. Our neighbors tell us that this is a bad place for twisters, but so far we haven't seen one. I can't wait, though. Johnny plans to lasso that twister and ride it like a bucking bronco, and he's promised his little sister a ride. Make connections. Talk about why the Kaw family moved to Kansas. If you could move somewhere new, where would you go? Why? Visualize. When you visualize, you use descriptive details from the story to picture what is happening. As you read My Big Brother Johnny Kaw, visualize the characters and key events to help you understand, enjoy, and remember the story. Find text evidence. In the second paragraph on page 325, I read a description of how tall Johnny Kaw is. This really helps me to visualize him. He was mostly talking about my big brother. At 15, Johnny had grown so tall that when he stretched out in bed at night, his head hung out the front door, and his feet hung out the back door, all the way into the chicken coop where the hens laid eggs between his toes. I can picture Johnny's head hanging out the front door and his feet out the back door. This helps me understand how big Johnny is. Your turn. Read page 326 of My Big Brother Johnny Kaw. What story events can you visualize? As you read, remember to use the strategy visualize. Cause and effect. A cause is an event or action that makes something happen. An effect is what happens because of the event or action. Identifying the causes and effects in My Big Brother Johnny Kaw can help you understand the sequence of story events. Find text evidence. As I reread page 325 of My Big Brother Johnny Kaw, I can look for important cause and effect relationships. This will help me better understand the plot of the story. Graphic organizer. Cause. Effect. Cause. Johnny is extremely tall. Effect. The Kaws decide to move west for more room. Cause. Johnny thinks the oxen are moving too slowly. Effect. Johnny pulls the wagon himself. Your turn. Reread My Big Brother Johnny Kaw. Find more examples of cause and effect relationships in the story. Add the information to the graphic organizer. Tall tale. My Big Brother Johnny Kaw is a tall tale. A tall tale is a type of folk tale. Features a larger-than-life hero. Includes hyperbole. Find text evidence. My Big Brother Johnny Kaw is a tall tale. Johnny Kaw is a larger-than-life character. The story includes examples of hyperbole, such as when the narrator describes her brother. Hyperbole is the use of exaggeration for emphasis. The detail that Johnny is so tall that his head hangs out the front door and his feet reach out the back door to the chicken coop emphasizes Johnny's larger-than-life qualities. Your turn. Find and list 2 more examples that show My Big Brother Johnny Kaw is a tall tale. Homographs. Homographs are words that are spelled the same but have different meanings and origins. Use context clues to figure out the meanings of the homographs in the story My Big Brother Johnny Kaw. Find text evidence. When I read the word head in the second and third paragraphs on page 325, I can tell it is a homograph. Both words are spelled the same but have different meanings. I will use context clues to figure out the meanings. At 15, Johnny had grown so tall that when he stretched out in bed at night, his head hung out the front door. We began to head west, but it wasn't long until Johnny hollered for everybody to stop.
Write about the text. I responded to the prompt, add an event to the end of the story. Use hyperbole as well as details from the story. Pretty soon, the biggest, baddest, meanest tornado the settlers had ever seen Pretty soon, the biggest, baddest Pretty soon, the biggest, baddest, meanest tornado the settlers had ever seen came roaring into town. Everyone ran screaming for cover. Johnny stood still. "Come on, Tadpole," he called. "Let's show this twister who's the boss." Then he lassoed that big tornado. Johnny held me with one hand and the twister with the other. The twister bucked and wiggled like a snake on hot coals until it finally gave up. Everyone was grateful that Johnny had saved our town from the tornado. Figurative language. Hyperbole helps make my story a tall tale. Vary sentences. I used a variety of sentence types and lengths. Grammar. This sentence contains the article the. Organization. I organized story events in sequence. Your turn. Add an event to the story. Describe how the family built a sod house when they got to Kansas. Use hyperbole as well as details from the story.